I'm Dr. Santhakumari from the Department of Public Health Dentistry. Today, I'm going to discuss about the topic, the evidence of hierarchy. Before going into this discussion, first of all, we should understand why we need to know about the evidence-based information. Because any information that we receive or hear or see that needs a proof or evidence. Because when we start doing our practice in our clinical setting, we would follow a systematic approach in providing healthcare to the patients. This systematic approach should be based on evidence-based studies. So there are many examples we can give for evidence-based practice. One basic example is infection control. Other one is assessing blood pressures, etc. So whatever the procedure we follow in our clinic needs a sound scientific background. So that sound background, scientific background gives us evidence of proof that we can rely on it. So, when all these evidences come into research studies, how do we believe or rely on such scientific studies? How do we know that study that are conducted and reported in a systematic way? We need evidence to believe that the study is worthy or not. So the study that are conducted and reported should follow a systematic methodology. For that, certain guidelines are given. So we should, the researcher has to follow the guidelines which fulfills all the criteria for a particular type of studies. So every practitioners, researchers, trainers has to be aware of evidence-based practice. The picture here shows the levels of evidences. In a research field, there are many types of researchers. When searching for evidence-based information, one should select the highest level of evidence possible. For example, systematic reviews or meta-analysis. Systematic reviews, meta-analysis, and also the critically appraised topics or articles have all gone through an evaluation process. That is, they have been filtered. Information that has not been critically appraised is considered unfiltered information. So, as we move up the pyramid, however, the fewer studies are available. It is important to recognize that high levels of evidences may not exist for our clinical patients. So if this is the case, you will need to move down the pyramid if your quest for resources at the top of the pyramid is unsuccessful. So coming from the top, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, we should know what is meta-analysis and systematic reviews. Meta-analysis is nothing but the systematic review that uses quantitative methods to summarize the results. Systematic reviews is an article in which the authors have systematically searched for, appraised the study and summarized all of the medical literature for a specific topic. Coming to the RCTs, next level of evidence in the hierarchy is RCT. That is a randomized controlled trials. These include a randomized group of patients in an experimental group and a control group. These groups are followed up for the variables or outcomes of interest. Next comes the cohort studies. Cohort study usually identifies the two groups of patients. Cohort means the homogeneous population who have a common characteristics. One, they will be divided into two groups. One which did receive the exposure of interest and one which did not. And following these cohorts, forward for the outcome of interest. So next comes the case control study. It involves identifying the patients who have the outcome of interest, that is cases group. The next is the control patients without the same outcome and looking to see if they had the exposure of interest. Next comes the ideas, editorials, and opinions. Actually, the opinions are referred from articles like handbooks, encyclopedias, textbooks. So they often provide a good foundation or introduction. They often include generalized information about a condition. While background information presents a convenient summary, often it takes about 3 years for this type of literature to be published. There are also other kind of researches like animal research and lab studies. These information begins at the bottom of the pyramid. So this is where ideas and laboratory researches take place. Here where the ideas turn into therapies and the diagnostic tools, which are then tested and with the lab models and animals. So this is all about the evidence hierarchy, and based on this level, our research and studies has to be conducted. So moving on to the guidelines for reporting such epidemiological study. Here today we are going to discuss about 5 important checklists or guidelines that are followed in our field. There are also many guidelines that are recommended for reporting the research studies which are conducted epidemiologically. But here we are going to discuss only about the stroke consort, Prisma, MOOS, and Cohort. So first of all, we need to know why we need all these guidelines. Because these guidelines, if followed properly, will give us methodological quality which helps us to avoid biases and also it gives an scientific accuracy in our studies. So thus these tools helps us to improve the accuracy, transparency, and completeness of the research. At the same time, it also increases the value of the published research. So beginning from the stroke checklist, it is nothing but the short form of strengthening the reporting of observation studies in epidemiology. So it has got a 22-item checklist. So the aim of this checklist is it addresses the reporting guidelines of the observational studies. It addresses 3 types of study designs of analytical epidemiology. They are cohort, case control, and cross-sectional studies. The intention of this stroke checklist is solely to provide guidance on how to report observation research as well. These recommendations are, first of all, we have to understand this stroke guide checklist are guiding how to report the observation research, but not, it is not prescribing a type of designing or conducting studies. It is not saying how to conduct a study and what are the design that has to be followed. This provides guidance of how to conduct the, how to report the observational research studies. So we should understand that the stroke checklist is not an instrument to evaluate the quality of observational research. So the first guide, this is the stroke statement is the first guideline given for the observational study. Many questions in medical researchers are investigated in observational studies. For example, observational studies are more suitable to detect rare or late adverse effects of treatments and are more likely to provide an indications of what is achieved in daily medical practice. So, the significance of establishing this stroke guidelines because observation study has got its own pitfalls, like it is not well detailed and clear. So the reporting articles based on the observation studies, basically it is not well explained or it is not clear. So, and it also this is the one of the pitfall of the observational studies. So this trope, the guide checklist helps us to present the observational studies in a clear manner. So this is the stroke checklist. It has got 22 items. It considers the essential for good reporting of observation studies. Right, from the picture itself, we can make out the item number. Under item number, that column shows 1 to 22 items. So each one got its own significance. For example, item number 1, it deals with the how the abstract to be reported. And like that, it goes. The item number 2 and 3 says how the introduction has to be. Then item number 4 to 12, how the methodology should be. Item number 13 to 17 deals with the results, whereas item number 18 to 21 deals with the discussion part. So like that it goes on. Um, Item number 22 says the other information of the studies, for example, funding and other details. So in this stroke checklist, we have got 18 items that are common to all 3 designs, that is the case control, cohort, and the cross-sectional studies. But the 4 items like 16, 6, 12, 14, and 15 are design specific with different versions for all or part of them. So for some items, for example, the footnotes which is given at the end of the checklist, it says the information should be given separately for study designs like case controls and the cohort studies. Here I have given a single checklist. Separate checklists are available for each of the 3 study designs. On the we can check out in the STOVE website. One of the limitations of the STOVE checklist is it is currently limited to 3 main observation study design, and also it won't estimate the strength and the weakness of the study. So this is all about the STOVE checklist. Next, we move on to the consort. This guidelines helps us in guiding the peer reviewers and editors in a journal. The full form of consort is Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials. From the name itself, we can understand that this guideline checklist is used for trials. So basically, this consort was developed in the year 1996 and revised 5 years later. Consort stands for Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials. It is used to solve the problem arising from the inadequate reporting of RCTs, that is randomized control trials. It has got 25 item checklist. The checklist items focus on reporting how the trial was designed, how the trial has to be designed, analyzed, and interpreted. So the main advantage of this checklist is, consort checklist is, we will get the trial report very clear, complete, and transparent. So it has also got its own disadvantage. It doesn't explain clearly about the ethical committee approval and informed consent. So next we'll move on to consort checklist. This is the consort checklist. This says of how the trial has to be conducted and reported, how the trial studies has to be reported. So before going into the checklist, we need to know what is a trial, that is the randomized control trial. So the trials that are randomized and considered, it is considered as a gold standard in a scientific evidence. Um, Current clinical decision making should be mainly based on the clinical trials by comparing two or more treatment or diagnostic tools, diagnosis methods. So this is a consort checklist gives for study designs like RCTs. Before following these, you should always keep in mind that these checklists are not meant for assessing the quality of the study, but the quality of the reporting studies. So, these guidelines are given for followed only for reporting the epidemiological studies. So, the Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials 2010, that is 2010 guideline, is intended to improve the reporting of parallel group randomized control trial, which enables the readers to understand the trial design, conduct, analysis, and interpretations of the study. It also used to assess the validity of its results. Consort is a protocol developed by a group of researchers not only to identify problems arising from conducting RCTs, but also it's used to report the trials in a full and clear manner. The results, thereby the results yielded by research facilitates the RCT's reading and quality assessment. This checklist comprises of 25 item checklist focused on scientific article writing. So this is also available in the website www.consortstatement.org. This checklist provides us with standards of how the trial was has to be designed, analyzed, and interpreted. Next, we will move on to next guideline checklist, Prisma. Prisma is a full form of Prisma is preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. It has got 27 item checklist. The main advantages of this guidelines, it gives us a clear, complete, and transparent reporting of epidemiological studies. For meta-analysis and the systematic reviews. And it also helps to measure the strength and weakness of the studies, and it is very much useful in the systematic reviews. So as we all know that the meta-analysis is a systematic review that uses quantitative methods to summarize the results, and a systematic review is an article which the authors have systematically searched, appraised, and summarized for all the medical literature for a specific topic. So Prisma checklist is an evidence-based minimum set of items for reporting in systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Also, this Prisma focuses on the reporting of reviews evaluating the randomized trial, but it can also be used as a basis for reporting systematic reviews of other types of researches, particularly evaluations of interventions. At this point, we need to know about critical appraisal. Critically appraised topic and critically appraised articles are different. First, what is critically appraised topic means? Authors of critically appraised topics evaluate and synthesize the multiple research studies, whereas in critically appraised articles, authors of critically appraised individual articles evaluate and synopsis the individual research studies. This is the main difference between these two. So the RCTs are reported will be followed for the okay. Sorry. So this is all about the Prisma. Next, going to the Prisma checklist. So the picture shows the list of items that are given in Prisma. It is modified in the year 2009. Actually, when we look back the historical background of this Prisma checklist, In 1980 itself, several early studies evaluated the quality of review reports. But in 1999, to address the suboptimal reporting of meta-analysis, an international group developed a guidance called the Quorum Statement. The Quorum full form is Quality of Reporting of Meta-Analysis, which focused on the reporting of meta-analysis of RCTs, randomized control trial. You might be knowing that systematic reviews and meta-analysis have become increasingly important in healthcare. Clinicians read them to keep up to date with their field, and they are often used as a starting point for developing clinical practice guidelines. Granting agencies for research studies, many may require a systematic review to ensure their justification for their further studies. So some healthcare journals are moving in this direction because they want to upgrade the quality of the studies. So as with all research, the value of a systematic review depends on what was done and the clarity of reporting. What was done and what was found and the clarity of the reporting. But as with other publications, the reporting quality of systematic reviews varies. It makes it's limiting the readers and also the ability to assess the strength and weakness of those reviews. So in the year of 2009, the guideline was updated to address the several conceptual and practical advances in the science of systematic reviews. And it was renamed as Prisma, that is preferred reporting items of systematic reviews in the meta-analysis. This is what I explained in the previous slide. This is a preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and the meta-analysis. So this is all about the Prisma checklist. So next we'll move on to the next checklist, moves. As the name is so catchy, this checklist deals with the research study that deals with the meta-analysis. So what is meta-analysis? As I discussed earlier, that is a meta-analysis systematic review that uses quantitative methods to summarize the results of the studies. So this proposed checklist contains specifications for reporting the meta-analysis of observational studies in epidemiology. So it includes the background, search strategy, methods, results, discussion, and the conclusions. So it's concerned with all these part of the study. So use of the checklist will improve the usefulness of the meta-analysis for authors, reviewers, editors, readers, and decision makers. An evaluation plan can be suggested, and the researchers are explored by using the moves checklist. So this is the moves checklist. It has also got many item numbers. So most researchers conducting clinical trials will already be familiar with the consolidated standards of reporting, that is Consort. Consort guidelines are for RCTs and STROBE for the observational studies. So you're clear about that. So STROBE is for observational studies and Consort is for RCTs. The moves, however, this moves checklist is for meta-analysis and systematic reviews. So, however, neither of these guidelines is directly applicable to, that is that STROBE and Consort are and not directly applicable to the systematic reviews. Meta-analysis of observation studies in epidemiology has been developed for a more standardized reporting of meta-analysis of observation studies. Although there is a measure of coherence exists between the Prisma and the moves checklist, the moves checklist pays far more attention to certain aspects of the search strategy. In particular, the inclusion of unpublished and the non-English language studies, which is absent in the Prisma. These sections are well attended by the MOOCE checklist. So, as it is recognized that observational studies are more prone to bias and confounding, greater emphasis is also placed on the quality assessment of the individual studies. So, and also it showed interest in the reduction of the publication bias. So the checklist recommends that the discussions and the conclusion of the meta-analysis should also include the elaboration of all other possible explanations for the result as reported. So that's the submission of articles in peer-reviewed journals for all systematic reviews and meta-analysis of observational studies submitted in the international journals now need to be accompanied by the completed MOOCE checklist. So most of the journals are following the MOOCE checklist for the systematic reviews and the meta-analysis when compared to the Prisma, because Prisma is lacking in certain aspects of the study research. Next, we'll move on to Cohort. Cohort is a guideline which has got a 32 item checklist. The full form of its Cohort stands for Consolidated Criteria for Reporting Qualitative Research. From the word itself, we can understand it applies to the qualitative study. It is very useful in identifying the patient priorities and needs which are well attended in the qualitative studies. So this improves the quality of qualitative studies. This is the qualitative checklist. So the first qualitative researches. Basically, qualitative research explores a complex phenomena encountered by the clinicians, healthcare providers, policymakers, and consumers when they want to take a decision. So the qualitative studies use a non-quantitative methods which contribute new knowledge and new perspectives in a healthcare. So such a qualitative researches encompasses a broad range of study methods, mostly qualitative research publications in healthcare system. The healthcare system gives us more perceptions towards the healthcare of the populations. So it which describes the use of interviews and the focus groups. What do you mean by focus group? Focus groups are semi-structured discussions, which has got 4 to 12 members. The researcher or investigator will aim to explore a specific set of issues. So there will be one moderator, often commences the focus group by asking broad questions about the topic of interest. Before going into the in detail about the focus group, we should also able to know what we have to understand what are the types of interviews and the types of focus groups. So, any researchers who is conducting these kind of studies should have a very good knowledge regarding the focus groups, because these things are addressed or it should be reported properly in the qualitative studies. So, the Cohort checklist was basically developed to promote the clear and comprehensive reporting of qualitative studies. The checklist consists of items specific to reporting qualitative studies. Cohort is a comprehensive checklist. It covers almost all the necessary components of a study design that has to be reported in the article. So the criteria included in the checklist will help the researchers to report important aspects of the research item and its methods, context of the study, findings, analysis, and the interpretations. So the main objective of the Cohort checklist is to develop a checklist for qualitative, develop a checklist for reporting the qualitative studies. It deals with, it has got 3 domains. First domain is research team and reflexivity. So this the items number are requesting the investigator or the researcher to report the studies in reflecting the on these three based on these three domains. The first domain is research team and reflexivity. Second domain is a study design, and the third one is a data analysis and reporting. So the criteria included in the core will help the researchers to report the important aspects of the research items. So the interpretations, methods, context, everything has to be reported in a methodological, in a systematic way. Because the poorly designed studies and inadequate reporting can lead to inappropriate application of qualitative research in decision making. So it also indirectly improves the comprehensiveness and credibility of interview and the focus groups. Thus, it promotes the complete and the transparent reporting among the researchers. Next, we'll see what are the other checklists in the health research. There are so many other checklists are developed. The most important things we have discussed. These are the other checklists: care, trend, start, entry, cheers, square, sample, spread. These are specifically developed for the particular designs. If you go to their go to the website, you can make out all these things if you want to conduct a specific study design. So coming to the conclusion, we can conclude like the research studies basically should have a good methodological quality. That is the main important thing. The formal reporting guidelines have been developed, but the researchers who is conducting the studies has to follow sincerely. To summarize the session, I will conclude with saying that consortancy checklist followed for the RCT and START for the diagnostic stress studies, and the quorum is for meta-analysis, and STROP for observational studies, and meta-analysis for the post. So these checklists are developed to or it is aimed to improve the quality of reporting the study types and allow the readers to be better understand the design and the quality of reporting the published studies. So this methodological following of guidelines allows the users of published research to be more fuller informed when they critically appraise the studies relevant to each of the checklists. And it helps to decide upon the applicability of the research findings to their local settings. So basically, we have to understand following the guidelines will help us to present our scientific reports in an accurate, which reflects the accuracy of the studies. And also it helps us to avoid all the possible biases. With this, I'll end up my lecture. Thank you for the patience. Thank you.